My name is Galen Gibson-Cornell. I'm an artist from the United States. I've been living here in Budapest for 1 year. This is an exhibition of some of my recent work, all which has to do with this phenomenon of political posters on streets in Budapest. Now, every city in the world has a culture of posters, I think, advertising anything from bands and musicians and clubs and events to political ideology. These things get advertised on these printed posters and put up in streets. And I'm interested in the moment where those posters begin to deteriorate, whether it's weather, sun, rain, wind, the elements, or whether it's other people, passers-by that rip and tear, that alter it somehow. And I'm interested in that moment where the function of the poster disappears. When the function of a poster disappears, I think there's room for some sort of aesthetic reading, or some sort of there's a possibility there for something else to be read into what happens to the poster. I've been focusing on these political posters that have been pasted up around the city before an election, before a national parliament election on April 6th. And so for months I was walking around the city and photographing every time these posters showed up, and every time they were altered or changed or something. And so this exhibition is a number of different ways I've found of looking at these posters and sort of altering them in certain ways. So this piece behind me is, I've taken a number of the same poster and dissected them and rearranged them into this one grid. So at the same time it's a number of smaller images that have been put together to form a larger one. I have a concept with these posters, the way I alter them, that has to do with what I call a portal. The portal is something that allows you to stand in one place and view something, look through the portal as a window into another space. I think that's something that photography does, is allow you to be in one place but look at another place. And it's something that I do with some pieces in this show. I've excised rectangles from the poster and then used them as viewing stations, actually mounted them at a height where somebody could look through a channel of these holes that progress in the distance. And I think there's something about that, about using an image, a viewfinder, maybe a portal in a poster, looking at that as a way to talk about other places. Because something about posters is that at one time they're site-specific, they belong to a particular unit, a particular space.
The exhibition, as to be expected, is really fantastic. You can tell every piece is really thought out. Galen has a certain artistic intuition and really closely connected to his art form.
Being trained classically did have a huge influence on me as an artist, because I have that background, because I know how to draw, I suppose, I think is the most fundamental thing. Drawing for me is just a way of learning how to see something. So spending time working with a pencil or a paintbrush to create something is very much just like an exercise of learning how to see the world in a different way. So I think that that's just given me a foundation for the work that I do. Even though that I'm not drawing anything or making something even with my hands, I'm using a lot of photography and a lot of found posters and things.
Time to destroy us.
So posters for me have come out of my interest in prints. So I was always interested in a print as something that was one image but then reproduced, and in that reproduction it's allowed to be spread throughout the world. So instead of having one painting, you can have the same image but that's reproduced infinite number of times and spread. I used to do a lot of research about what made, in times of political trouble, let's say, military occupations, or in times when societies have less creative rights, I was interested in what artists could do in that situation to be able to continue to make artwork. So I was looking at these photographs of what artists were doing in France during the Nazi occupation, and I saw this one street, and there were Nazi propaganda posters lined up along the street, and these photographs were taken on the day of the liberation. And you could see in these photographs like old women that were just attacking these propaganda posters, because they were allowed to do that now, but they were just ripping them down there was one image of this woman that had tossed a bucket of paint on one, and that just became this really powerful action of finally having power to strike back somehow, even if it's only symbolically using the avatar of the poster. The project was made possible by the Fulbright. So I applied, after I came back from Budapest the first time, I was basically needing to come back. I felt a desire that I had to return, and so I applied for a Fulbright. A Fulbright fellowship had always been a goal of mine anyway. I believe in everything that it stands for anyway, of spreading cultures to other countries and using that as a kind of a spy training to take a person to another country where they're going to be some sort of useful engine or some sort of helpful force that's in the other country, and they get to learn about that other country, bring some specific knowledge, and then take something back. That's always something that I've been interested in doing, and something I do naturally, I think. And so I applied for a Fulbright fellowship to come back to Budapest, and that's been what's allowed me to have those affiliations, but also just a motivator for me to continue with my work. I've always thought of my work as being an in-between space. I've always operated in a couple of different spheres, I think, within an art world or within my own sort of creative process. But I think my work has always been hesitant to define itself as either. I'm not necessarily just a printmaker, I'm not necessarily a photographer. I'm something with as an artist I rely on a lot of tools, but I sort of make my own path. Now I'm a member of a group of American Fulbright artists that have come to, or Fulbrighters, I'm an artist, coming to Budapest for a set period of time, creating something, and then dispersing again. And again, that to me that's like a sort of an in-between, a happy medium. And I think my work exists in that space, and sort of being not yet dislodged, but not yet comfortable. And I think that that's a very important mental space for me to be